On Wednesday, the British government announced criminal charges against 2 Russian nationals for the killing of a former Russian spy and his daughter in Salisbury, England. Russia has denied involvement in the killings. U.S. Ambassador Nikki Haley chaired a UN Security Council meeting on the attack. After her remarks, we hear from the British and Russian ambassadors. This is 35 Minutes.
This morning, the Security Council addresses the use of chemical weapons for the first of 2 times today. As we have previously, the United States expresses its unequivocal condemnation of the use of chemical weapons in Salisbury or anywhere else. We stand firm in defense of the international norm against the use of these horrific weapons, and we stand firm with the British people. It's easy to express outrage, of course. We do it every day in this chamber. What is difficult is finding solutions. And today, our British friends and colleagues are providing us with a master class on how to stop the spread of chemical weapons. They are creating accountability for those who use chemical agents and providing vital support for the international norm against the use of these deadly illegal weapons. The British government is pursuing accountability for this attack in the only way accountability can truly be accomplished, in accordance with the rule of law. British investigators have conducted a full and fair investigation of what has been determined to be the attempted killing of Sergei and Yulia Skripal and Detective Nick Bailey. The investigators have linked these crimes with the chemical agent that poisoned Charlie Raleigh and killed Dawn Sturgis. Prime Minister May went into great detail about each step of this investigation. Hundreds of detectives have analyzed thousands of hours of CCTV footage and thousands of documents. Some things we knew already. British investigators had already concluded Russia was responsible for the exposure of hundreds of people to a deadly agent on the streets of Salisbury. Now, thanks to the careful, methodical work of the British authorities, no one should have any doubt. It is actually amazing to see the clarity and the undeniability of the results. The British government has identified 2 Russian nationals as responsible for the use of the Novichok nerve agent on British soil and the attempted murder of a British citizen and his daughter. Critically, the British have also concluded that the 2 men are officers of the Russian military intelligence service. This was not, as Prime Minister May said, a, quote, rogue operation. This was a highly planned, purposely driven attack. The British had the suspects on CCTV from their arrival at Gatwick Airport to their travel to the vicinity of the Skripal's house on the day of the attack, and finally their departure from Heathrow back to Moscow. Every one of us in this room and listening around the world should be chilled to the bone with the findings of this investigation. As for the subsequent poisoning of Charlie Raleigh and the death of Dawn Sturgis, Prime Minister May said it well, quote, "Were these 2 suspects within our jurisdiction, there would be a clear basis in law for their arrest for murder." This is how it's done. This is how individuals who commit murder and their heinous crimes are exposed. This is how nations that defy the international norms that keep us all safe are held to account. This is how the memories of those injured and killed and the service of the first responders who cared for them are honored. It now falls on us to do our part. Rather than accept responsibility for its actions, the Russian government has offered only denials and counter-accusations, anything to deflect attention and distract from its guilt. The Russian denials have followed a familiar script, from Crimea to MH17 to the Donbass to the killing of Litvinenko. The list goes on, and the song is always the same. Russia is somehow never behind these incidents. But no one's buying it. The most recent British action ensures that Russia doesn't get away with this brazen attack. In direct response to Russia's use of chemical weapons in the Salisbury incident, the United States has announced additional sanctions against Russia. And together with our NATO allies and other partners, 153 Russian officials were expelled around the world in response to the attack on the Skripals on UK soil. While this incident was in Salisbury, who is to say it couldn't have happened in Paris or Amsterdam or Addis? But we must now help our British friends find the 2 Russian suspects they have identified and bring them to face justice in the United Kingdom. Better yet, why doesn't the Russian government turn these 2 murderers over to British authorities? We must fight and win the broader battle against impunity for chemical weapons use. This is a day for explanations from Russia and solidarity with our colleagues in the United Kingdom. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam President, and thank you for scheduling this meeting today at short notice following the announcements in the United Kingdom yesterday. When the Council last met on this issue on 18 April, I undertook to update the Council in the light of significant developments. My Prime Minister's full statement to Parliament has been circulated to the Security Council as document SC2/2018/814. As the British Prime Minister announced yesterday in Parliament, the United Kingdom has reached a significant conclusion in the Salisbury CW investigation. I'll come to that later if I may, but first a brief summary of what happened in Salisbury earlier this year. On Sunday, 4th of March, Sergei Skripal and his daughter Yulia were found unconscious on a bench in the city centre after being poisoned by a Novichok nerve agent. Detective Sergeant Nick Bailey, a Wiltshire police officer, was also seriously ill after having been exposed to a nerve agent. Following this attack, the United Kingdom notified the OPCW, invited them to confirm the identity of the substance involved, and we briefed members of the Security Council. The OPCW's independent expert laboratories confirmed the UK's identification of the Novichok nerve agent. Madam President, the Skripals are thankfully recovering, but on 30 June this year, 44-year-old mother of 3 Dawn Sturgis fell ill in the nearby town of Amesbury after being exposed to Novichok. She sadly died on the 8th of July. Her partner, Charlie Rowley, was also exposed to the nerve agent, and he became seriously ill. Police have identified that Sturgis and Rowley came into contact with a counterfeit perfume bottle which had been discarded in Salisbury. Tests of this bottle following its recovery by police confirmed it contained a significant amount of highly lethal Novichok nerve agent. On 4th of September, the OPCW's independent expert laboratories have again confirmed the UK's identification of the Novichok nerve agent with a very high level of purity. And to remind Council members, a very high level of purity means that it will have been made by a state. The inquiry into the Amesbury incident has now been formally linked by the police with the attempted murder of the Skripals. The OPCW independent experts have confirmed the identification of the Novichok nerve agent, and it is the exact same chemical was used in both attacks. Madam President, it stretches credulity for the identification of such a nerve agent twice in close proximity to be a coincidence. We have previously shared with the Council the information about the Russian foliant programme from the 2000s, but to recap briefly, there was a development of Novichoks outside the Chemical Weapons Convention, and Russian agents were trained in assassination techniques, including the use of such agents on door handles. Madam President, in the UK, the police are independent of government, and they have been conducting a painstaking and forensic investigation. This investigation has involved around 250 detectives who have trawled through more than 11,000 hours of CCTV footage and have taken more than 1,400 statements. Working round the clock, they have carried out painstaking and methodical work to ascertain exactly which individuals were responsible and the methods they used to carry out this attack. This evidence has been independently reviewed by the Crown Prosecution Service, and they have concluded there is a sufficient basis to bring charges. We have thus independently concluded that there is enough evidence to bring charges against 2 Russian nationals for the following crimes: the conspiracy to murder Sergei Skripal, the attempted murder of Sergei and Yulia Skripal and Detective Sergeant Nick Bailey, the use and possession of Novichok, and causing grievous bodily harm with intent to Yulia Skripal and Nick Bailey. The investigation into the murder of Dawn Sturgis remains ongoing. Madam President, the evidence reveals the following. It shows the arrival of 2 individuals travelling under the names of Alexander Petrov and Ruslan Boshirov to the UK from Russia. CCTV and other evidence records their travel to and from Salisbury, and crucially, there are images which clearly place them in the vicinity of the Skripals' house at 11:58 a.m. on Sunday, the 4th of March. This was moments before the attack took place, which involved placing the substance on the Skripals' front door handle. Madam President, should any council member wish, we can share copies of those images. Further, testing of the hotel the pair stayed in London revealed the presence of traces of the Novichok substance in their hotel room. Based on a thorough analysis of our intelligence, the UK government has concluded that the 2 individuals named by the police investigation are in fact officers from the Russian Military Intelligence Service, also known as the GRU. This is a body of the Russian state. Madam President, we previously, when we briefed the Council before, attributed responsibility to Russia on the basis of technical means, operational experience, and I recall the case of Litvinenko here, and motive. Russian statements have said that former Russian agents are, if you like, fair game for assassination. These arguments have now been firmly reinforced by the clear evidence of the involvement of identified Russian nationals travelling to the UK from Moscow and returning there on Russian passports. This evidence has been sufficient for our independent prosecuting authorities to bring criminal charges in relation to the Salisbury attack and to issue European arrest warrants. Madam President, these 2 individuals are no longer in the United Kingdom. Were they with us, these 2 suspects within UK jurisdiction would be liable to arrest in a clear basis in law for their attempted murder crimes. It is clear, Madam President, that the Russian state does not permit the extradition of Russian nationals, and I understand that this is a prohibition in the Russian constitution. So therefore, with respect to these 2 individuals, we have obtained a European arrest warrant, and we will shortly issue an Interpol red notice. Should either of these individuals ever gain travel outside Russia, we will take every step open to us to detain them, to extradite them, and to bring them to face justice in the United Kingdom. And we responded at the time to Russian behaviour robustly. The Council will recall that we were joined by 28 partners and NATO in expelling more than 150 Russian intelligence officers. This was a proportionate and direct response to deter and degrade Russia's ability to conduct further operations in the future and to reduce her ability to use the GRU network to cause our citizens harm. Madam President, we have clear evidence of Russian state involvement in what happened in Salisbury and the use of CW. This is reckless involvement, endangering the lives of many citizens, and reckless involvement endangering the universal prohibition on the use of CW. Madam President, as the Council has discussed before, there is an established pattern of malign Russian behaviour perpetrated by military and intelligence agencies overseas. This was shown in the October 2016 coup attempt in Montenegro, shown in the June 2017 NotPetya cyber attack, which caused an estimated $1.2 billion of damage worldwide, and it has been shown in other cyber attacks. The GRU has time and again been responsible for Russian interference in other countries' affairs, and most recently we saw US indictment of GRU individuals in relation to the 2016 Democratic National Committee hack. Now, in the light of the evidence from Salisbury, we see that GRU activity also encompasses the use of illegal military-grade nerve agent on European soil. Madam President, P5 members bear a particular responsibility to uphold global norms and international law, all the more so where weapons of mass destruction is concerned. One P5 member has not upheld these important norms. One P5 member has undertaken a pattern of behaviour which showed that they tried to murder the Skripals. They played dice with the lives of the people of Salisbury. They work in a parallel universe where the normal rules of international affairs are inverted. This is a direct challenge, Madam President, to the rules-based international system which has kept all of us safe, including Russia, since 1945. In the face of such behaviour, the international community needs to continue to defend the laws, norms and institutions that safeguard our citizens against chemical weapons and safeguard them against the threat of hostile foreign interference. This is why the British Prime Minister yesterday set out the importance of using transparent multilateral mechanisms to identify and hold malign actors to account. Allow me to summarise the steps that we believe should now be taken by the international community. We need to work together to strengthen the Chemical Weapons Convention against the use of CW around the world, and which we saw most recently violated on the streets of the United Kingdom. We need to build further the OPCW's capability to attribute the use of chemical weapons. There can be no place for such incidents as Salisbury again. We need to shine a light on the use of state agencies to undermine the rule of law and interfere in the domestic lives of other countries' citizens. And we need to make best use of our established methods, including sanctions, in curbing threats to our societies and our ways of life. As Theresa May emphasised yesterday, the United Kingdom has no quarrel with the Russian people. We continue to hold out hope that we will once again enjoy a strong partnership with the government of this great nation. We have fought alongside Russian troops in the Second World War, but we will respond robustly when our security is threatened, when the lives of our citizens are endangered, and when the norms and rules of international law and the international system are flouted in such a brazen and reckless manner. We stand with our partners and allies. We are determined to continue to disrupt together the hostile activities of foreign intelligence networks on our territories. We will uphold the prohibition of chemical weapons. We will protect our citizens, and we will defend ourselves from all forms of malign state activity directed against us and our societies. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Madam President. We listened very carefully to the statement of our British colleagues who promised to provide new information on the investigation of the so-called Skripal affair. We carefully also examined the statement of the Prime Minister of the UK, Theresa May, in the British Parliament on this topic. Now, to be frank, we very much hoped that today we'd hear something convincing that sheds light on this mysterious incident. Unfortunately, our expectations were not met once again. In today's statement, we heard the same repeated lies on the so-called double agents as a reason as a legitimate murder by Russian special services, intelligence services, about training of Russian special services in the handling of toxic chemicals, about the development of military-grade chemical agents in Russia, about cyber attacks, about attempts to engineer an overthrow in Macedonia, and a lot of other information. I'm not going to go through the list of this whole unfounded and mendacious cocktail of facts. Similar insinuations were heard from the British Prime Minister yesterday. Just yesterday, we found out that the courageous British investigators published photos of two individuals suspected in poisoning Sergei and Yulia Skripal. Precisely this is provided by the British authorities as a sensation, as a turning point in the investigation. These individuals supposedly have Russian last names and citizenship, with well-known degree of certainty, highly likely. It is stated that they work for the Russian intelligence services. At the same time, it is assumed immediately that the names provided are aliases. Furthermore, unlike the previous unsubstantiated provocation of a similar type, the Litvinenko affair, the British side does say that to attempt to obtain extradition of these two individuals, it does not intend to do so from Russia, nor do they intend to cooperate with the Russian authorities. And why should they even try? That does not enter the plans of London's game. Several delegations today, in their statements, called on the Russian side to cooperate with the United Kingdom. Well, everything is exactly the opposite. We have been calling London to cooperate rather than London calling us to cooperate. And London has been refusing us this cooperation. For London needs this story for just one purpose: to unleash a disgusting anti-Russian hysteria and to involve other countries in this hysteria. Now, the number of inconsistencies and unresolved issues in connection with the new British so-called quote-unquote evidence is off the charts. For example, on the photos provided by London of the suspects, where they are shown going through the same identical corridor, supposedly in Gatwick Airport, the time indicated corresponds down to the second. Now, according to information stated by Theresa May, the suspects found themselves next to the house of Skripal approximately at noon on the 4th of March, whereas earlier in all police reports it was stated that the Skripals left their house that day early in the morning and never returned. So how would it be possible for them to enter into contact with the contaminated door handle of their house? It's difficult to consider convincing that the suspects used a regular container of a perfume bottle to transport the mythical Novichok, as follows from the public reports of OPCW experts, in particular on the Amesbury incident. This substance is so toxic and dangerous that to transport it, it would be necessary to use specially protected containers. Otherwise, the person transporting the substance would definitely suffer themselves. Madam President, in Russia, there's a very popular joke about a character named the Elusive Joe. Now, he's elusive not because no one can catch him, but rather because no one needs him. No one is even interested in looking for him. Now, I have a strong feeling that we have been provided with two such elusive Joes, which supposedly were acting on orders from Moscow. Perhaps some of you are convinced by this spectacle, but I believe that this new episode of this is just as invented and just as produced out of thin air as the previous episodes. Our British colleagues have taken a very comfortable position. They have issued a verdict. The guilty party, Russia, has been declared. The real names of the suspects are unknown, real names, although supposedly it is known that they work for the GRU. How it's possible to determine this without knowing their names is a mystery for us. We are called to cooperate. As I said, it's actually we who have been calling London to cooperate, and London from the day one has refused to cooperate. The British ambassador was called into the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Russia, where, in response to a request, the ambassador refused to provide Russia, the British authorities rather. The ambassador said that the British authorities have refused to provide Russia information that the suspects were supposed to provide to the embassy when they applied for their visa. This includes fingerprints, using which it would be much easier to identify them than using a photo from the internet. There's nothing surprising about this. In this post-truth world that is being created by Western colleagues, the world of delirium and fake news is quite enough in order to issue a verdict and even start punishment. Now, of course, London does not intend to take this case to its conclusion. It's not interested. Now, since we're here once again to hear information from London, let us just make, in broad strokes, recall what actually happened since the moment of the attack in Salisbury on the 4th of March. There are two Russian citizens that were exposed to a mysterious nerve agent. They're being held somewhere, and in breach of all international legal and humanitarian norms, they have not been given access to Russian consular services or even their close relatives. This is a fact. All we've seen is a television statement by Yulia Skripal, which raised many questions and suspicions that she's being the subject of serious moral and psychological pressure. There's also a letter in the form of an ultimatum demanding that it acknowledge that it is guilty of the attack against Skripal. There are also several letters from Russia to Great Britain with proposals to take part in the investigation and with a very convincing list of concrete specific questions which have remained unanswered. And lastly, there are the conclusions of OPCW experts that on the 4th of March in Salisbury, a nerve agent was used, and that the origin from which country it came was not possible to determine. It was not possible because, as a matter of principle, it is not possible to determine this. Probably that is the end of the actual facts of the case. Everything else is just conjecture created by the very rich investigation and Russophobia of the official London authorities. Now, given the obvious contradictions in the investigation, which has been fueled by leaks to the media, our British colleagues simply disregard these, spawning new, even more absurd versions. I'm not going to list them all. Your time is too valuable. I just want to say that half a year later almost, it's still not clear why Russia would want to poison the Skripals, or why it would want to do this in such a strange, sophisticated, and illogical way. We were told that a gel was applied to the door handle. Now Theresa May has said that supposedly the suspects brought with them a perfume bottle. And there are lots of such inconsistencies. However, a lot of unsubstantiated conclusions. These abound that apparently Moscow is responsible, and this led to concrete sanctions. Now, this theater of the absurd, the only one who's gained from this is Nina Ricci Company, which has received a lot of free advertising. The fact that the British authorities still have no evidence that Russia is responsible for Salisbury or any kind of clear version of what happened. I think everyone is already convinced of that, and we have lost all hope of actually finding the truth or those who are guilty. So for us, the only issue is what kind of ploys London will invent in order to avoid a truly serious rather than a politically motivated investigation of the case. The quote-unquote sensational disclosures that were provided today are part of the crude strategy pursued by London. And by the way, we have no problems with rank and file British citizens who we have a great deal of sympathy for, and we like them very much, as you saw during the World Cup. The problem is with the government that is trying to mislead the world community and their own citizens. Madam President, now, I'd like to shift to more official language and as a summary state the following. The Russian Federation categorically rejects all unfounded accusations regarding its involvement in poisoning with toxic chemicals in April of 2018 in the city of Salisbury of Russian citizens Sergei and Yulia Skripal, which were once again repeated by Prime Minister Theresa May in Parliament on the 5th of September. We call on the British side to moderation. We confirm our readiness to conduct consultations in coordination with the bilateral consular consultation from the 2nd of December 1965 and the European Convention on Mutual Legal Assistance on Criminal Cases from the 20th of April 1959. We demand consular access to the illegally detained Russian citizens. Once again, with full responsibility, we state that these statements by official London that only Russia supposedly has or had technical means, practical experience, and motives to carry out such an act with the use of chemical substances as completely unfounded and only aimed to mislead the international community. The Russian Federation has never developed, never produced, and never stockpiled toxic chemicals, which in the West have been named Novichok. The very word Novichok and the information about the structure and mass spectra of the chemical compound started appearing in foreign specialized scientific literature and applied databases. With information provided by Soviet defectors who had only a very indirect connection to the Soviet military chemical weapons program. Furthermore, such developments were conducted in a whole range of other states, including Great Britain, the United States, and other Western countries. And the laboratory, the Ministry of United Kingdom in Porton Down was involved in these kinds of research and development. There are volumes of specialized literature in the West about this work. The last circumstance is particularly important to understand what happened regarding the Skripal case that has been produced by London against Russia and the following incident in Amberley. The Russian Federation would like to make an appeal to all states with all responsibility and to support the appeal to the government of the United Kingdom to begin consultations with the Russian Federation in the framework of the Convention on the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons and the two aforementioned conventions. In conclusion, Madam President, from the statement of London, what is absolutely clear is that already back in May, it had all the information that was presented yesterday. Without determining the list of suspects and determining the fact that they were in Salisbury, there would have been no reason to search the hotel where they stayed. Obviously, if all this so-called evidence were as important as it's claimed to be, that they would have been published 4 months ago, even before the tragic events in Amesbury. From all this, it follows that we can make only one conclusion. Downing Street is governed not by the interests of justice, but by other reasons and motives which we already mentioned. The incident on the 4th of March became a very useful pretext to unleash anti-Russian hysteria and was used in an attempt to undermine our authority as a member state of OPCW on the eve of the staging of the use of chemical weapons in the Syrian city of Douma. Today, we are witnessing a similar picture. The statement by Theresa May on the 5th of September took place sort of on the eve of the new political season, and regarding the regarding the situation in Idlib and the provocation that is being prepared there by the fighters there, together with the white helmets, which we have warned about more than once. We will circulate to UN member states the relevant materials on the topic of today's meeting. Thank you very much, Madam President.